Hello, hello, hello. The mask is back, and finally a really good card. Now, unfortunately, the prelims aren't nearly as good as the main card, but when you have Patchy Mix on the prelims, it's still pretty solid. And with that being said, it's probably like an 8.5 out of 10. I might as well copy Weasel with that rating thing he does. It's a fairly good thing to, start the video to get a grip of what we're going to talk about and how good it is, right? Um, I mean, I've always done the rating, to be honest, but Weasel kind of did that forever. It feels like forever almost. So I'm kind of, you know, doing something similar to Weasel there. But, I mean, he's not Nintendo, is he? He's not going to freaking copyright. He's not going to patent percentage score of how good a card is, like Nintendo's doing with what's it called, Power World. But uh, kind of random obscure rant there. But we have Brogan Walker and Veronica Hardy. Easy pick, decision 30-27, Veronica Hardy. Brogan has been out of the game for 2 years. I'm pretty sure 2 and 5 months. And Veronica Hardy actually has some good speed, solid boxing, okay kicks, and okay takedowns. She's just losing to some people who are probably top 15 level, I'd say. Ramiz Brahimaj and Austin Vanderford. I'm going with Vanderford. I know that it's a pretty solid underdog to go with Ramiz Brahimaj, but I'm gonna go with a. I'll go with a decision. It's a tough fight, It really is because I mean, Nikolai Veretennikov isn't that great of a win, and he was kind of getting pieced up a little bit at moments against Nikolai Veretennikov. And Vanderford has to get the ground control. He has to and the thing is, he doesn't do that much on top until the second round, or maybe it was even the third. I think it was second round. He actually let go with some ground and pound and some submission attempts against Nikolai. I'm talking about Austin here, but uh, Brahimaj is always attacking. He had a good guillotine against Billy Ray Golf. And did I say golf? I mean, it kind of sounds like it, doesn't it? Billy Ray Golf. Yeah. And Ramiz, honestly, he has like some good power. The boxing is kind of similar, although I'd lean towards Vanderford. It's a tough fight, it really is. And I do think that Brahimaj is in his prime, so it's a really tough fight to pick. I'm gonna lean towards. I was picking Vanderford, and I usually don't get these right. That I switch last minute, but I've been seeing like some of the tape. I've been watching back some of the fights, and it's like I don't know, Austin Vanderford, he could like hold him down to a 29-28 decision, but I don't see him finishing Brahimaj. But then again, Temba Garimbo, Court McGee were able to kind of cockroach their way to a decision, so I'll give a decision to Vanderford. Kind of went back and forth a bit there. Also, bedtime quote: his new tier list, the cockroach tier list, beautiful tier list there. And he's right. Neil Magny is the S tier in that regard. Farid Basharat and Chris Gutierrez. Um, yeah, this is an easy pick. Farid Basharat, 30-27. I'm going with 29-28 for Austin Vanderford, by the way. And yeah, I think that the thing with Chris Gutierrez is he's way too low output. He could stun the leg of Farid Basharat enough to the point where he can't really shoot meaningful takedowns. But we've seen in the fights that Chris Gutierrez has even been winning lately that he's really quite dominant on the feet, but he just doesn't throw enough. And to sort of switch it up, I guess he like kind of does some, I forget what it was, but he like does something stupid to end up on bottom. That's kind of that ended up being his fault for the most part, if my memory serves right there. He kind of, and even against Song Yadong, he kind of pulled guard. Like in both the fights he's winning and losing, he's making some amateur mistakes to end up on bottom. And even though his opponents aren't really doing much on top, it's enough to keep him there without the referee saying, you got to do something. So I think that it's a pretty clear 30-27 here. The only realistic option is for him to really butcher the legs and hope that he can't shoot meaningful takedowns. Macy Chasson and Yana Santos. I'm going with Macy Chasson. Pretty obvious pick here. I'm gonna go. Man, lots of decisions here. I'm picking. I think Ramiz Brahimaj is a really good underdog, and he's in his prime, like I said. But I just Temba Garimbo, who isn't all that good. Let's be honest, he's all right, and Court McGee, who's definitely not that good. Kind of just they just kind of like NPC'd their way to a win. So I don't trust him. I don't trust Ramiz in that fight too much. Although he had a really good underdog win against Billy Ray Golf. He was like a 3-1, something like that in odds. Yana Santos is basically a blitzing kickboxer. She blitzes in and then she ends it with a leg kick sometimes. And then when her opponent is on bottom, she'll do a lot of tappy leg kicks. Um, and she doesn't really try to control on top. She'll just kind of let him get up uh, after she does a little pitter pat leg kicks. And Macy Chasson is a little more meaningful in the striking because she's more aggressive. Yana Santos waits for those moments to blitz more often, whereas Macy Chasson is I feel like she is able to play that rangy game as well with the attributes that she has over Yana Santos, while also being the more overall aggressive fighter. So they're quite similar, but I lean towards Macy Chasson. And then Pulihele Soriano versus Nikolai Veratenikov. I am going with Pulihele Soriano. I actually do think that Nikolai is a solid striker, quite underrated to be honest. He really is, but I think he's better against these tall, long, rangy guys. Like I think a Sam Patterson would actually lose to Nikolai. I think you saw against Danny Barlow that he actually, in my opinion, he got robbed in that fight. And it's just these young, more shorter, built, compact, like sort of wrestle boxer types that he has a problem with. And you saw that in his most recent win, even though it was a loss, I mean, a win, it almost was a loss because he made some rookie mistakes on the ground. And he also, he was kind of allowing Pulaheli Soriano or what? No, I mean he's kind of like a lightweight version of Pulaheli Soriano, but no, Francisco Prado was he was kind of just letting him get into the pocket a little too easy in the second and third. So I think that Pulaheli Soriano is going to probably near the end of the first round find his blitz, find the moment. I'm gonna go with first round KO. Finally, a KO on this card. And even if it goes late, mm, I don't think it'll go decision, or I don't think Pulaheli would win if it goes decision. However, I do think that he has the higher potential in the second and third to finish the fight. That's what I'd say. I'd be surprised if he got a decision, to be honest. And yeah, I think Edwin Shabazian, unless he shows a really terrible ground game and Andre Muniz is able to get him there because, Jung Young Park is quite small and Edwin Shabazian isn't that much bigger. Um, and Andre Muniz is quite decently sized middleweight, so he could kind of just stall out to a 29-28. I could realistically see that. But I'm going with Edmund by another first round KO. I'm going to say I could see a 1-2 hurting Andre Muniz, kind of similar to Ikram. I think Ikram hit him with like a jab or maybe, I think it was a cross maybe. Let me just double check here. Left hook, okay. Either way, it was like a lead hook. And I think that the fact that he was really kind of just being an NPC out there, not really landing too much on Ikram, although Ikram's solid, he was kind of respecting him too much. And I think that he'd do the same against Edmund. And even if he doesn't, he might run into something. So I think that Edmund's jab has really improved. That's what he showed me against Andron Petroski. I thought that he was going to maybe get wrestled and just cardio kickbox to a decision loss, but Edmund actually showed some good fundamentals, especially with that jab. But the only thing is the pacing here. I don't know if Andre Muniz might actually try to set up a pace that Edmund Shabazian isn't ready for because he has been trying to pace himself a little more. Or it might be that he doesn't actually get the KO and he loses a 29-28 because he doesn't go for the finish because he's trying to pace himself a little too much. And Pachi Mix versus Jakub Wicklats. Or which Wicklats. I don't know how to say the K there. Maybe it's like a ch. Wicklats. But I'm going with Pachi Mix. I kind of hope that Jakub wins. But I'm going with a second round submission for Patchy Mix. I think that they're both really similar as well. I think that the grappling is quite similar. However, I think that the boxing from Yakub is certainly better. Patchy Mix is more long and rangy with his tools, even though he has the shorter reach. But he doesn't really he's really slow, to be honest, on the feet, and he doesn't really impose his will. So it's really in the grappling that you're gonna see the difference. So if Yakub doesn't take him down, or if Patchy Mix doesn't go for takedowns, I could realistically see a 29-28 Yakub Wicklets or Wichlets win here, but I'm going with Patchy Mix because he does have an okay 1-2. He can do enough to survive on the feet in moments. Um, Against the fast twitch, solid boxing, body upstairs, sort of decent boxing and footwork, honestly, even compared to Patchy Mix. Um, I think that it's tough on the feet, but I do think it'll end up in the ground at one point or another, and I think it's going to be the second round where there's kind of feeling out process over and done with, and Patchy Mix maybe shows the 1-2, and then he goes in for maybe a double leg or something. Yakub makes his way back up, and then he exposes the back or the neck, and he gets either a rear naked choke or a guillotine. I'm gonna say he exposes the back, but instead of Patchy Mix going for a rear naked, he tries to go for the guillotine and he gets it. Something like that, because I'm pretty sure he has solid guillotines from my recollection. In fact, I think he actually submitted what's the dude name? Magomed Magomedov with the guillotine. No, that's Stotts. Rafion Stotts. Yeah, guillotine. So I think he's gonna get him with a guillotine. Drew Sang Yu and Daniel Santos. I think Drew Sang Yu is really, really good on the back foot. He is very good sniping and counterpuncher, and even showed some offensive takedowns in his regional scene. I saw one of his fights outside of the UFC, and he actually shot a offensive takedown there. But for the most part, the offense from the other opponent was constantly pushing pressure up against the fence, and it was a 30-27 clear, but he was pushing a lot of takedowns up against the fence. And I think Daniel Santos is much more skilled in that department. He has some very solid trips. He's so quick twitch in the boxing, and he does have a very short reach and height, especially in comparison to Ju Sang Yu in the reach department. He uses his reach much better than a Daniel Santos. But Daniel Santos, his speed is so good. Once he gets in the pocket, it's like I said with Jakub Wichlets or Wicklets. It's the exact same thing, but even more so. He has like amazing boxing, mixing it up to the body and to the head. Mainly hooks, but sometimes he throws in really good 1-2s. The 1-2 is more of his range tool. Sometimes he throws out the leg kicks, but for the most part, he uses the 1-2 to find the range. And then, occasionally, like I said, he'll mix it up with the leg kicks, the knees. Even sometimes he throws out some body or head kicks, but those are extremely rare for him. And Ju Sang Yu, don't get me wrong, he had a really good KO, a really, really solid flash knockout. Or I don't know if you could call it flash knockout, but it was a really beautiful knockout against Jaka Serki. But the problem with Jaka Serki is he's much more chinny, he's been in much more wars, and people talk about how Daniel Santos got rocked in his last fight. Yeah, but it was a 30-27 clear still. Just because he got rocked by one, left hook, one, shovel uppercut hook type of thing, it was like a weird, variation of that. Ju Sang Yu is not gonna he can do that for sure, but he's not going to put him away like that. Daniel Santos has shown a really good chin in war situations like that, where he's just in the pocket brawling. And like I said, he has the quick hands to get into the pocket, so I don't fear that much for him, the range finding process. I do think it'll be quite worrying, considering that Drew Sang Yu is such a sniper, but if he needs to, he can go to the wrestling, which people act like he hasn't been doing. People are saying, oh, I guess like the Weasel, for example, a great example. Like I said previously in this video, but it's a different example. It's not the all rating the card thing. It's relevant to what he was saying on this fight. He was saying oh, I think that Daniel Santos, the odds, I think they think that he's gonna shoot takedowns, and it's like, how can you not think that? He shot so many takedowns and got so much control time off his last opponent. it was another Korean, Jeong Young Lee. And that was a prospect too, and he actually just pretty much dominated him, if you ask me. He dropped him, rocked him, wobbled him in every round, got a ton of takedowns. I think that this is a really good fight for him. I'm going to go at 29-28. I think the first round is going to be a pretty tricky feeling out process, but in the later half of the round, he sort of gets some ground and pound shots off. Attempts a rear naked choke off of a takedown, and then Ju Sang Yu's pop isn't all there. He's kind of feeling the weight off of having to defend the takedowns. And Daniel Santos' speed is still there. He's popping the 1-2, then he gets in close, lands a couple uppercuts to the body, and then comes up with some hooks, and then gets some takedowns, and then rinse and repeat. 29-28. I think he's a really good underdog in the sense that pretty much everyone's picking him, although he is a favorite in actual betting odds. And Tristan Vines and Atuba Gautier. Power jab KO for Atuba Gautier because he is a specimen. Moving on, although I will say I am rooting for Vines because he did do the sign of the cross on the weigh-ins, so I'm rooting for him. But moving on quickly because that is a non-fight. Joe Pyfer Abus Magomedov. This is interesting in the sense that if Joe Pyfer can't deal with the rangefinder tool of Abus Magomedov, which is that front kick, it is certainly going to be a challenging night for him if he can't get past that. But I do think otherwise it is going to be quite easy for him. And also actually the takedowns. That's something that I noticed. Even in the first round against Michel Pereira, he was actually shooting some pretty nice blast double legs. I think it might have been only one actually, but it was a really nice blast double leg against Michel Pereira. But the difference is Michel Pereira looks so bad, and so did both of them. Like, even if this goes to the distance, which I don't think so, I'm actually going first round KO because Joe Pyfer showed a really good countering ability against a pretty fast Kelvin Gastelum. That was like one of the better Kelvin Gaslums we've seen in recent memory. I think that Abus Magomedov has a really good front kick. He has, in the first round specifically, some pretty fast hands, but and he has a pretty good double leg takedown. Even in the third round against Bruno Ferreira, he actually showed an ability to shoot a solid takedown. But Joe Pyfer is a much more taller, longer, rangier guy than what Abus is used to. And even though Abus is still the longer, rangier guy, 78 inches of reach is impressive for middleweight. It is still not enough for Joe Pyfer with his very quick twitch reactive abilities. Having his lead hand prod or it's the range finding tool, having it sort of find his mark. I think that's really good against Abus, who does that sometimes, but doesn't reach as far with it as a Joe Pyfer would. And I feel like this is going to be good because he's going to, for much of the first round, he's going to be, he's going to be sort of faking that overhand, and he's going to throw a couple jabs out there. Abus is going to feel like he also has a chance on the feet. He's going to land a few of those teeth kicks, but then he's going to come forward with that boxing combination like he did against Michel Pereira and didn't get punished for it because it's Michel Pereira with terrible defense. And Michel Pereira is literally just a genetic, like, he's literally just a genetic specimen that he has no real tools. All he has is like a straight right punch. That's all that Michel Pereira really has, or like a body kick. He's gonna realize that, oh, wait a minute, this guy isn't Michel Pereira. He can actually freaking counter me, and when he realizes that, it's too late. I do think that the takedowns is interesting because Joe Pyfer hasn't felt the need to deal with that yet, or maybe he has felt the need to do that in training, but in the actual cage, he hasn't really had any guy shoot a offensive takedown on him. So that's actually one area I'm also kind of interested in, but I am going to go with the first round KO. Even in the second or third, I do think that he has the potential to win because even though he also is kind of like a slow pace guy in the later rounds, Joe Pyfer, he is still always dangerous, and Abus is way slower. He always gasses in the third. He always does, and even in the second somewhat. Yusuf Zalal, Josh Emmett. I was really flirting with the idea of picking Josh Emmett, but I'm going with Yusuf Zalal by a 29-28 decision. I think that Josh Emmett will drop Yusuf Zalal in the second round after a kind of frustrating first round. The really tricky thing here is, man, it's like the way that Yusuf Zalal turns his head when he does that fancy footwork stuff that he did against Calvin Kattar. It's just prime time for an overhand right to land beautifully on his temple. But the problem with that is, Josh Emmett is older. You don't know how, like, fast it's going to be at this point. Yusuf Zalal is really showing, especially in the first two rounds against that Kelvin Cater. You saw that he's really showing a really uh, fast twitch, footwork, jab, head movement. It's all really good. The problem is that because he doesn't leave his guard, he practically doesn't have a guard. He kind of just leaves his hands super far away from his chin and relies solely on upper body movement. It could be a vicious overhand right KO. And I would totally not be surprised to see it, but I think this is going to be Josh Emmett's retirement fight, to be honest. And if it's a win, hey, more power to him, right? But I just think that and he does have more tools than just the overhand right. He does have some solid hooks in the boxing, in the pocket, and he does have a couple leg kicks, an okay takedown, but it's not there 90% of the time. And he was doing solid against a what's the dude's name? Lerone Murphy in moments, but I feel like he's more willing to play that game. That he does have fancy footwork too, but he's not as fancy as Yusuf Salal, and he does play that game with the high guard a little differently than a Yusuf Salal. I think that he'll drop him a flash knockdown, but it's going to be 29-28 still for Yusuf Salal. Man, it's a really I was really going back and forth with that one, but I'm going to have to lean towards Zalal. And Khalil Roundtree and Yuri Prohaska. I'm going with Khalil Roundtree by second round KO. The problem with picking Yuri Prohaska in this fight, and he's like interchangeable with Marab, Ilya, and Yuri as my top three favorites. It's Yuri, Marab, and Ilya. Those three are my favorites right now. So this sucks having to pick Khalil, but stylistically it makes so much sense, and I'm genuinely surprised that so many people are counting Roundtree out. At least the odds aren't really counting him out because in some other fights, like Khalil's odds would have been like against Alex Pereira, he showed a good showing of himself, and he was still like a minus 450 going into that, or even more so. I don't know, but the odds makers kind of sort of recognize what I'm seeing. Not quite yet because it's still minus 205 here, but nevertheless, Khalil Roundtree, he has a really good back foot blitz. Off the back foot blitz and then get out exit from the pocket, in and out movement, and he also has some pretty solid circular footwork. You saw that against Anthony Smith, where sometimes he would actually pressure Khalil Roundtree, and he would constantly circle, constantly circle. And I know that's Anthony Smith, but still, he does show really good fundamentals in the footwork. And as for the Blitz, like I said, I do think that he has some really good in and out movement there, and he picks his shots very well. Sometimes he'll go to the body and then come upstairs. It's a very Muay Thai style. He has perfected the best possible Muay Thai style that you can have in MMA, aside from maybe Rafael Fiziev. Even then, it's like and that kind of shows that the level of Muay Thai and MMA, it's just not going to be number one ever, but it will be like top five, top four, something like that. But with that being said, I do think that Yuri Prohaska's head movement is going to cause him some real problems at first, for sure. But the problem with people saying, "Oh, his head movement's just going to be too tricky. He just has a really good chin. He just keeps pressuring you, and he's going to make Khalil gas." I get that. I totally get that. However, one thing that people are really forgetting about in this fight is the leg kicks, and I understand that Yuri walked through not Khalil, Alexander Rakic's kicks, but Alexander Rakic has a cumulative damage to those legs, whereas Khalil Roundtree, he has just complete force in those kicks. He also has those oblique kicks. He has, the knee stomps are absolutely vicious. So if Yuri just kind of comes in a little too reckless at one moment, it could cost him his knee. And that's not really, you saw that against Modestas Bukauskas, who honestly is a very underrated fighter at this point. You saw recently Modestas is honestly on his way up as well. So that's a pretty good win on his resume that's aging, exactly well. And Yuri Prohanska, listen, he has a very good finishing ability, no question. If he sees you hurt, he's going to finish you. But Khalil Roundtree, he's going to look a little gassed in moments. He's going to have a little cut, a little bruise in his face, but he's not going to be wobbled. I don't believe that. I think that he's going to get hit with some uppercuts. I think the jab is going to be there. I think that he's going to get caught with a knee coming in. And I think that he's going to get a little bit hurt by the end of the first round. and it's going to be a 10-9 Yuri, but he's going to feel those leg kicks. And then in round two, he's going to pick up the leg kicks even more so, and he's going to drop Yuri with a leg kick. It's not going to be too devastating because it's just going to be a leg kick drop, but it's going to be a drop nonetheless, and he's going to feel it. And then Khalil Roundtree is going to see these sort of reads in his bobbing and weaving head movement because Yuri Prohaska does rely on baiting and countering a lot, but when he has some of that movement of his stunned, it's going to be really hard for him to actually make any sort of meaningful attacks after that. He might go to a takedown like he did against Alex Pereira in the first fight, but aside from that, I think that if he chops at the legs, chops at the body, chops at the knees, and then comes upstairs with some solid fast twitch 1-2s, hooks, and like I said, the body kicks, I think it's going to really add up, and I think that the whole body of Yuri is just going to be kind of stunned as to what moves can he make next. So I think it's going to be Yuri is going to be uncharacteristically stationary in the second round in certain moments. And I'm rooting for him because I saw that he had the rosary in the weigh-ins, and I'm really, I'm always rooting for Catholics. I'm always rooting for Christians in general, but especially Catholics. And so I love it from Yuri. He's such a good spiritual guy, such a good, just a good guy. But I don't think he'll win this one. I just think it's too right for Khalil Roundtree this matchup. Like I think Yuri would have a good time with um, some of these other top guys right now. I was gonna say Alberg, but I don't know, to be honest. I think that he'd have a honestly an easier time with Magomed than a Carlos. But Khalil is pretty much gonna do exactly what a Carlos Alberg would do. And those two styles are nightmares, I think, against Yuri. But anyways, Merab and Corey Sandhagen, yeah, this is going to be a 49-46 clear for Merab Dvalishvili, in my opinion. I think that Corey Sandhagen has very interesting approach with the leg locks, the um, not just leg locks. What is it called? You know what's the other one? Like the it's the leg lock and then the one with the knee bar, I guess. He has some really good leg attacks, and so he really goes for submissions after. He doesn't just let you get the back. He doesn't just let you take down. He's always moving. He's always constantly, even on the ground, he's always constantly moving. But there's a difference in the pace. Even though Corey Sandhagen has shown time and time again a really good pace, it's against these guys that are kind of walking at him quite stationary, not actually shooting, not actually throwing very many uh, fast twitch meaningful strikes. Like you've seen him push a pace against a Chito Vera, a Rob Font, who, although Rob Font has a solid jab and he sometimes pressures quite well, he was not able to do so in that fight. And that's because, Corey Sandhagen showed a good takedown, but I do not think he'll have the strength to take down Merab. And even if he did, it'll only be for one moment, and Merab is going to reverse him, I feel, or at the very least, get right back up. And Merab Dvalishvili, he's shown such a speed and quickness in his hands, especially against Sean O'Malley in his last fight, that, man, I mean, it's not always the most polished, but sometimes it's actually solid counters, and he doesn't run into stuff. I know that MHA said that, so you're going to be like, oh, you're just stealing talking points from MHA or something. But no, I mean, it's a noticeable fact. It's not something that I came across immediately after watching him MHA. It's something that it was just affirmed by him, but nevertheless, another thing that's really prominent in his game is what I've seen, and I should have realized this in the Sean O'Malley fight. I was just nervous because he's one of my favorite fighters. I didn't want him to lose, and so by proxy, I was like, okay, if he loses, then at least I got my pick right. But with that being said, something that I should have realized going into that was these teep kicks that an Umar was throwing was not landing nearly as much as we thought it would, and he was actually sweeping away at them with the hands, and that's something that I didn't really notice. I pointed out a bit. I said, "Oh, it's there, kind of, but it's not fully there." But against Sean O'Malley, it really was there. He was constantly sweeping away at that. So I think that those tappy kicks from Corey is not going to really be there. I think that Merab will catch it or just sweep away at it. And I think that even though Corey is going to have the range advantage and the reach advantage and the height advantage and all of that, um, I think that he's going to do better in the striking for early on, but he's going to feel the pressure, and Merab is going to tag him in multiple moments. And I think he could actually drop him in like the fourth or something because he's just tired so much that he can't keep up with that fancy footwork, with that lead hand, sort of prodding at the opponent's hand, sort of feeling out the distance management. I don't think that he's going to be able to do that at that point later in the fight, and I think he's really going to feel it in the fourth, and I think the fifth he'll actually get. I think that Merab is not going to give him respect, and so I'm going to say that the fifth is because Merab is just constantly going. I actually do think that he is going to sort of um, feel it on the stool a little bit, and Corey's like, okay, this is my one chance. I'm just gonna leave it all out there, because even though Marab has the better cardio, if he's just gonna leave it all out there like a Hamzat against a Kamaru Usman, which I think he'll kind of sort of have some reminiscence of in this fight. He's gonna slow down a bit enough to where Corey Sandhagen can land a few of his pitter pat jabs and 1-2s. And Magomed Ankalaev, Alex Pereira. I was not considering Alex Pereira in this fight, although I am certainly saying that the fact that pretty much everybody is counting out Alex Pereira in this fight shows me that it's a really good underdog pick. And I do think that he does have a path to victory. However, when we're seeing that he's 38 now, yes, he has the reach advantage, yes, he has the slight height advantage, but when we're seeing this age differential, when we're seeing the speed that Magomed Ankalaev was able to get into the pocket and get out with the beautiful 1-2, with the beautiful jab, and then that stun Pereira in the third round, how he was able to bait out an attack from Pereira and then counter with a lead hook. Like, he has so many good attacks in the boxing, and he even has some okay leg kicks himself, although it's certainly more tappy than Alex Pereira's, where you see that Magomed Ankalaev, on the other hand, when he's exiting the octagon, he's completely stumbled and bumbling, stumble, bumble, wumbling around, whatever you want to say. But Magomed Ankalaev, he also has the clinch work, which could certainly play in his favor. Alex Pereira can trip him. We have seen that in the fight prior, but what is that really going to do? I mean, unless he lands that pitch perfect left hook while he's down on the ground or something, I don't see it. I think that Alex Pereira's defense is not going to work for him in this fight. I just think that Magomed is going to find more reads than Alex will. I think that this idea that he needed to put the jab on Magomed Ankalaev more is a little blown out of proportion, because it's not really something that maybe think about it like this. Maybe instead of, oh, he just should have pumped the jab more. Maybe it was, oh, he actually couldn't because he feared the speed, and so he just relied on the leg kicks, which was the most safe option for him. Because the jab, even though it was landing more than other strikes that Alex Pereira was throwing, it was going to leave him open if he kind of went to it too much. If he was too predictable with the jab, Magomed does have really solid footwork. He would slip it and come in with a clean combo, I believe. And he even works the body, which is good against Alex Pereira, because you saw against Khalil Roundtree. I even said this in the first prediction video. He really doesn't like the body shots too much. And Magomed, even in the training leading up to this, you've been seeing him go for some teep kicks. This is going to be really good, because it's going to allow for Alex Pereira to not throw too much. And Magomed Ankalaev is going to see that the gas tank is dwindling. And I truly believe that Alex Pereira, he just kind of, aside from round 2 against Israel Adesanya in the first fight, I think that round 2 is kind of his kryptonite. He kind of gets a good feel in the first round sometimes, for the most part, and he then in round 2 gets a little too hungry for either he gets too hungry for a big moment, or he doesn't know what to do in that moment, and so he kind of fumbles. So I'm going to say that Magomed Ankalaev kind of actually, I'm gonna go with round 3. I'm gonna go with do I go with round 2 or round 3? I'm gonna go with round 3, because I do think it's going to be a little bit of a feeling out process. And even then, Alex Pereira does have a pretty solid round 2 sometimes, like I said, against Israel Adesanya in the first fight. So with that being said, I think he's going to land probably a 1-2 that stumbles Pereira. Kind of like when Alex Pereira, he's feeling the body, the teeps to the body. He's feeling these constant the circling of the lead hand, which is something that Magomed was doing beautifully. That's something that people don't utilize enough, I don't think. The constantly up and down, bouncing with the knees, and then the circling of the lead hand like you're washing something, like you're washing a window. That's kind of a funny bouncy movement, but it's really technical. And I feel like he's going to be really confused by all that. He's going to be really confused by all the looks that Magomed is giving him. He's going to get hit with a clean 1-2 that kind of wobbles him, similar to the first fight against Magomed, where he gets wobbled by, I think it was actually a lead hook, but nevertheless, he's going to be all over the place. He doesn't know what to do. He's sort of just leaving his hands open in that stance that he does, where he doesn't really leave his hands close and tucked to his chin. He just kind of leaves them out there to sort of hope that Magomed is scared by the left hook or the uppercut, but he doesn't fear it. He goes for the finish. He finds an uppercut of his own, and I feel like it's going to be an uppercut in round three. That's truly what I believe. It could be like a hook or an overhand, or no, it's not going to be a jab. Come on, Alex Pereira's chin isn't that bad. Let's be honest. But so many shots stunned Alex Pereira in the first fight. I just have to go with Magomed Ankalaev, and I do think it's going to be a finish this time around. Well, thank you so much for watching. Mask of MMA out. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I'm out.